Stephen Munatonis, thanks for
Hey,
doing this again.
good morning again. Yeah,
It's
it's been a
good to see
while.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's been a
yeah.
while, but seems like I just spoke with you.
Yeah, for those of y'all kind of tuning in, Stephen was, I want to say, episode number 4 or 5 of the Pain and Performance podcast. And go back. I know we gave a great overview, and I'm sure we'll do some reviewing. But give us, for those who didn't catch that episode, since we were kind of early in the game, give us the quick overview of kind of who you are, where you are with Katsu, and what Katsu is.
Yeah, I'm an old engineer. I just so happen to speak, read, and write Japanese. I'm also a swimmer, and that's how I met Dr. Sato. Um, uh, Everything from I met him in 2001. Um, it was mutual acquaintance introduced us. Dr. Sato is the inventor of Katsu. I asked him, he did Katsu on me. I thought it was just a profoundly beneficial modality, non-invasive that I could do, my parents could do, my children can do. And I asked him right there, hey, Dr. Sato, can you teach me? And he pointed up to his head and he goes, it's all up here. So for the next 13 years, he taught me, he mentored me, he took me to hospitals, he took me to baseball teams, he showed me people as old as 104, he showed me car accident victims, etc. How to apply Katsu, whether you're an Olympic champion or an 80-year-old baby boomer. And after that 13-year membership, mentorship, he said, Steve, you're ready to introduce Katsu to the rest of the world. And that's what I've been doing since.
Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit. I definitely encourage people because we gave a great overview to go check out that episode, and we're going to kind of add to the knowledge of kind of how Katsu and blood flow modification can be used in people's health and changing, muscle growth, healing, all of the above. But we came across it in, I forget exactly what it was. I want to say it was like 2015, and read a story about the Olympians. We talked about it last time. Olympians using it to recover from a bone fracture before going to the Olympics, and in my mind, I thought it was fantastic in terms of like getting an athlete back, but even more for the person who didn't have the capacity to move as well. It was like if you can generate muscle growth and strength in the person who has trouble moving because of pain or restriction or immobility, it was like this is a game changer in terms of like the functional regenerative rehabilitative capacity. So that was where we came into the Katsu picture,
Yeah.
just a lowly 8 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we've done unbelievable since then. I mean, Doctor, you were one of the early advocates, and I greatly appreciate that. And so we went from that silver medalist in the 2014 Olympics who broke his humerus, his upper arm, torn some ligaments, 28 days before the Olympics. We rehabilitated him. He was so strong after 28 days of breaking his arm, tearing his ligaments, that he was our actual American flag bearer in the 2014 Sochi Olympics. And that, skiing is a big thing. Nordic combined is an event that many Americans don't know about. But since then, NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA, um, people like celebrities that I can't name, but more importantly, the soldiers, the wounded warriors we have. I mean, we've done some stuff with quadriplegics, paraplegics, amputees. We have Katsu on aircraft carriers, submarines, military bases, and so when we can get uh, these Americans and Europeans, Asians, it doesn't matter. When we can get these people who have through no fault of their own been wounded, injured, maybe a car accident, maybe they fell off their bike. If we can get them healed faster, so they can get back to work or get back to the field of play faster, stronger. I mean, it is a daily uh, act of passion of all everybody in our team, and we love it because we feed off of the feedback that we receive from people saying, I even had a stand-up comedian call me one time, and he goes, you know, I'm a stand-up comedian and my back and my legs hurt so much I can't stand up. So all my gigs have gone. I goes, I need to stand. And we got that stand-up comedian to stand up on stage and perform well. So it's been a while, but we've continued on.
Yeah, and I guess some of this is probably like the research that has come out. What do you attribute? I mean, look, we first talked in 2015, not in like podcast sense, but just hey, how do we implement this in the physical therapy realm and in the regenerative therapy realm? And then we started talking to people about it, doctors and patients, and it was not on anyone's radar that in terms of like knowing what it is. We were educating a lot, right?
Yeah.
And then, our first podcast episode, we got a lot of kind of, hey, what is this? I'm starting to hear about it in the kind of health hacker world a little bit. And then in the last 3 years, I feel like, blood flow modification and blood flow restriction have just exploded in terms of people talking about it, people talking about Kaatsu, and people using it, basically every major um, you want to call them health hacker or kind of the talking head, so to speak, have talked about Katsu or blood flow modification. What's been the big shift in terms of getting it into public awareness?
I think it's just people as yourself, people, our own users. We don't advertise. We don't have a marketing budget. We not huge on social media. Our work is done day to day by individuals, healthcare professionals who actually see the results. And our average user, for example, 70% of our civilian users are over the age of 55. 70%. And these are people who just have, aches and pains of getting older. And they talk to their aunts, their spouses, their next door neighbors, their children's parents, etc. And it just grows from there because we've done lots of research ourselves, and also everybody in the BFR world has done lots of research. So, we were planting the seed way back when, and the seed started to grow, and then that gave off more seeds, and now we have plenty of people in the BFR world, the BFM world, and everybody's doing their special thing, the thing that they really love, and people are seeing results. And when physicians, chiropractors, physical therapists, occupational therapists, coaches, trainers, physios, etc., start to see the results, you actually don't need marketing and advertising to spread the word. And when someone has a broken finger, and they type, if they're a young ball player and he has tendonitis and it's his senior year in high school, or he's in college looking to go to the pros, he and the female athletes just go, God, how can I get better faster? And they just Google Katsu, they Google BFR, and they come.
So let's give a quick kind of update on the Katsu technology because
Yeah, yeah.
y'all have come quite a long way from our first unit, which we still use
Oh,
every day.
yeah.
So from 2015, I think we've upgraded the bands and I think we've changed the cords out, but we still use that very first unit every single day in the office. We do have kind of one of the newer ones, but for the home user, y'all have kind of created a whole new sector almost, it seems. So let's give the listeners kind of what would Katsu use look like today.
Okay. So I have them here. These are our two latest units. This is our workhorse. This one here. It's called the C3. It stands for our third generation unit, and it is connected to bands with tubes on it. So there's lots of tubes, and this is the unit. You put this unit around your upper arms and upper legs. And that was our workhorse unit. This unit actually was, we helped, or the Navy SEALs actually helped design this for us. They actually looked at our older models and they said it's not rugged enough. We put it through the paces. We're out there using it in the gym, outdoors, you name it, on the sand. And so we took our previous unit and we just made it more robust. So if you drop it, they wanted our signature Kaatsu cycle mode to be longer, so we lengthened it. And then as this started to pick up steam, it started to be used by a lot of wounded warriors, people who were in wheelchairs, walkers, etc. And so the physicians, the physical therapists, the chiropractors, et cetera, were telling us, hey, I can't have my 75-year-old guy who has gout and, or diabetes and, he walks with a limp. He can't be walking around with all these tubes. And so we listened to the customers and we came up with this unit, which is no wires, no tubes, no anything. You just put it around your arms or legs, and then you use your phone to actually do everything. So we have this unit that now became this unit, smaller, and now you don't have any tubes. You can do everything on your phone, or you can manage your pressures on your phone. And very, very importantly for people as yourself or myself, is we get that data and we can tell people if they're a new user, let's say they're a 60-year-old woman, we can say the average 60-year-old woman uses it for this long, this much pressure, and this is how you do it. So before, we were just telling people how to use it, but they had no reference point. Maybe they saw, an Olympic athlete or a Navy SEAL use it. That's great. But if you're a 60-year-old woman, living in Atlanta or, whatever, Indianapolis or, Bend, Oregon, that didn't mean anything specifically to you. And now we can tell that 60-year-old woman, her husband, her son, her mother, this is how this unit works optimally for someone in your age group with your aches and pains. So that's been a real game changer in terms of getting everything online and on your mobile phone.
Yeah, and I love that. Whenever y'all came out with that, I was like, man, the implications of being able to start at least laying the groundwork of maybe collecting mass amounts of data from the users to show, hey, here, a 60-year-old woman, if you use it 3 times a week, here's what we've found is that, we can increase your muscle strength and muscle mass if you're doing X, if you're doing that, and really start to give some very clear guidance. One of the things that I'd like to kind of dig into with you a little bit is using this in the older population to actually increase muscle strength and muscle mass. When we look at the kind of aging population and we look at the metrics around strength, what we know is that, if you're in the lowest quartile of strength, then your risk of all causes of mortality is somewhere in the order of like 5x higher than someone who's in the highest quartile of strength. So just being weak is a massive, massive risk for, your longevity and just survival in terms of everything. So a lot of what we've started looking at is once we get our patients healthy is saying, okay, you're feeling good, you're pain free. Now, what are we going to do with that? What are we going to use that for? Let's put the building blocks in place so that you can now use this extra energy, extra mental space, extra health to build a longevity system and build your health span so you can travel and move and do everything. And when you look at the data, you're like, strength is one of the biggest things that's not talked about in that.
Yes, absolutely. And it's not only is it theoretically true, it's practically important. Opening that jar of jam, being able to wash your hair with ease, just lifting up your shoulder, carrying a heavy bit of maybe you're traveling, you got a heavy bit of luggage. All these things, as we don't think about it when we're 25 or 35 or maybe even 45, but we do start thinking about it when we're 55, 65, and we have to ask our child, hey, can you lift this up for me, or can you move this desk or something? And so our goal when we have new customers in Katsu, we say, where you are now, your strength, your stamina, your energy levels, we want you to be that same level or greater 10 years from now. That is our sort of goal for people. I say, hey, if you're 65, whatever your level of strength, stamina is, let's use Katsu and let's aim for and exceed that same level of strength and stamina when you're 75. And so we're playing the long game here. So longevity is really about, as you absolutely correctly state, strength is something that we weren't taught that when we were young. Nobody said that. And we have this fact, this very important fact. At the same time, we're all sitting down for longer periods of time. You know, when I was a kid, I'd go outside my neighborhood, we'd be riding bikes, throwing the football, doing all kinds of stuff. Now I go around my neighborhood, the kids are there, except they're indoors. They're on their computers, or they're texting their friends or making Instagram, whatever they're doing. And so we've got everybody, myself, my children, everybody's just much more sedentary. So our goal was, how do we increase the strength and stamina when people are sedentary? We're not going to change their lifestyle, but can we add something to their lifestyle that won't impact their lifestyle, but will actually make their quality of life better by increasing their strength and by increasing their stamina?
Yeah, I love and the synergy of that is like creating a device that there's nothing, you grab your bands. You could like one thing that I will take away from this is like I travel and speak a lot more now than I have in quite a long time. And I talked about it last week. I was speaking in Orlando, and it seems that almost every time I travel, my fitness routine kind of, gets all scrambled. I'm still trying to get in the hotel gym, but you never know what they look like. You get in there and there's a treadmill and there's some mats, and you're like, I was looking and doing some kind of updating research for our call, and I was like this is it. I will absolutely leave this with getting some easier bands to travel with. And then how much easier is my kind of fitness routine whenever I'm on the road? I might be getting more out of my fitness routine whenever I travel if I'm increasing the utilization of Katsu more, whenever I'm away from home than I am at home. So, to get that access to those people and make it easier for them really kind of brings, the synergy of what you're talking about. How do we make it easy for that population to use it? If you're okay with it, let's dive into that though. Like,
Okay.
what
Yes.
would, so like I think about my parents for this is it's
Yeah.
like one of the big things is, look, they're in their mid 60s or so. Right now is that time where you still have the capability to build strength. You can still build muscle. We probably need to pay attention to diet, and we need to talk about protein and all that stuff, but you still got to do the work. You got to stimulate the growth.
Right.
What would it look like for that person if they're saying, hey, not only do I want to like stop the degradation of muscle loss right now, but actually for these next few years, I want to put on a few pounds of muscle. What would their Katsu program look like? What would you recommend? What are we talking about in like times a week? What does a session look like?
Yeah. So that's what everybody asks. You're getting right to the kernel of the point. You can use this machine literally every single day in the comfort of your own home, or if you're traveling. So what you do is you take the bands, put them around either your arms or your upper legs, one or the other. You can sit, read a book, watch a movie, fold clothes, uh, wash your car. Every single activity that you do in the home, inside and out, in your office, you can do with the Katsu bands on. And that's what we recommend. You don't have to do a burpee, a push up, a pull up, do leg press. You can if you want. And we do have some very, very active people who do that. However, the real gain of Katsu is you're going to do all these things anyway. You're going to walk your dog, you're going to prune the hedges. You're going to do these things in your house, or you're going to go to the office and you're going to be most probably in front of a computer. If you're a white collar individual. If you're blue collar, you're a carpenter, you're doing other things, you can do katsu in the same way, the same way that any athlete would use it. You can do the same thing. If you're a laborer and you're moving things, if you work in a warehouse, a factory, etc., you can do those same things. You can do it during lunch. You can do it during dinner. You can do it during breakfast. You can put the bands on. So this is a typical day. I'll get to the point. Wake up in the morning, and for some people, they wake up in the morning and their back is just throbbing in pain, and they got a little bit of a problem getting out of bed and sort of getting through the day. Those individuals in bed, they're throwing on the Katsu bands. Most of them are putting them on your legs and just gaining a little more blood flow in their lower body. Only takes 5 or 10 minutes. When they have the adequate blood flow in their lower body, all of a sudden they can swing their legs off the bed and walk around. They can start making their breakfast, they can start brushing their teeth, washing their face, etc., with the bands on. There's lots of women in their 40s and 50s. They throw the bands on, they're front of the mirror, and they're putting on mascara. That is a great use of katsu. They're going to put on their makeup anyway. Why not use that time to also exercise? And what they're doing is they're engorging their arms in blood, and just simple movement, brushing your teeth, combing your hair, putting on makeup. That simple, what we call micro movements, is the equivalent of a resistance workout. You and I know that because we've
Yeah.
actually done it. But those little micro movements of brushing your teeth, putting on the makeup, it's it's profoundly effective in building muscle. So the is engorged in blood. The muscle is actually working more. We think of exercise as bicep curls or push-ups or something. In fact, we just need those capillaries to be engorged in blood, and we just need to do a bit of movement. A bit of movement, let's say in the weight room, if we're doing isometric pushes or isometric pulls, the same way you put your bands on, hold a book in front of you know, hold that book, just turning the pages. You're reading whatever you would like to read as you're getting a workout. If you're sitting down, so you've done your makeup, you've done your brushing your teeth. Let's say you go to the office. You go to the office. Let's say you've already done one bout of katsu. Now it's lunchtime. You get the same unit and you put it on your legs. You've been sitting at a desk all day long. Put them on your legs. Just extend your legs out, curl your toes, throw off your shoes, just rotate your ankles, whatever you would like to do. Or if you finish your lunch and just want to go for a nice 10-15 minute walk around the office or wherever you are, walk around the office with the bands on. It's the equivalent of doing much more walking at a much higher pace. It actually increases the elasticity of those veins in our lower body. So you can do that, go home, do the same routine. And so we recommend people using it every day. The more frequent, the better. That doesn't mean using it for hours on end. It just means that you're using it in the course of your day, and people will see. We encourage people, take a tape measure, you know measure your body parts, um, or ask your partner, your spouse, hey, look at me in 1 month, look at my body again. How has it changed? How do you want it to change? And we can affect that change with katsu.
Yeah, and kind of what you're saying is like just finding ways to create these very, you can almost use a lot of these normal activities. I forget exactly who authored the study, but there was a meta-analysis that found like even very low load resistance exercise with Katsu created hypertrophy
Yeah.
across like I forget how many muscle groups they tracked, but it was basically across the whole body. You could create hypertrophy, so muscle growth with very low load, which is a little bit counterintuitive to what we used to think in terms of like the only way to grow muscle is to do this progressive heavy overload of, kind of lower reps, very high weight, which I think is probably still, there's still a place for that in some populations. But to be able to get the hypertrophy without the risk and without the injury, and certainly, in an older population, we want safety in there. That's a really powerful effect.
Yes, yeah. So even walking your dog, even going outdoors and just walking around your neighborhood with the bands on, we have our modality is called the Kaatsu cycle mode. So it's pressure on for 30 seconds and then pressure off for 5 seconds. So it's the bands squeeze your legs and then release for 5 seconds. Squeeze your legs for 30 seconds, release. It's not a tightness. It's not like a blood pressure cuff. It's a snugness. You do feel the compression, but when you do just simple walking, what's happening is the veins and capillaries of your leg are being engorged, and that literally uh, amplifies the amount of exercise that your body is undergoing. And when your legs, just a simple walk, are walking around the block or wherever in the park, wherever you are, what then happens is that signal is sent up to your brain, and then the brain releases hormone, which actually helps grow muscle. So you don't have to be in the, we, especially as we get older, we don't want to go to the gym. If you're a 25-year-old, hey, going to the gym is a nice place to be. Look around, make friends, have some people you do lift weights with. That's great. But when you're 65, we've got other things in life. There's other things that we would prefer to do. And we can build muscle doing those things, doing simple things with the bands engorging the limbs, the legs or the arms in blood. Now, a lot of people say, I get it, I get it. You put the bands on your arms and you can build up your arms, your shoulders. I get it. You put the bands on your legs, you can build up your glutes, your legs. That's great. But what do I do about my core? What do I do about my gut and my lower back that hurts? And so there's three easy movements you can do to help your trunk, your core. That is, put the bands on. You could be in your kitchen, in your living room, or in your office. Put the bands on your legs. Do the cycle function, pressure on, pressure off, as you're sitting up straight. You know, I tend to slouch in my chair, but when I'm working on my core with Kaatsu, I'm sitting up straight, shoulders back, straight spine, keeping a taut center of my body as the bands are going pressure on, pressure off, pressure on, pressure off. People are surprised when all of a sudden their gut starts to tighten up. And that is one of the weakest points of the human body, especially as we age. And it's very important to keep your core quite strong. That's one exercise. Second exercise is you simply stand up with the bands on and balance on one foot for as long as you can. When you get tired, switch feet and balance on the other foot. You don't have to do um, um, you know crunches, ab work or planks or anything like that. Just stand on one foot for as long as you can. We have many, many men, older men, who can't balance on one foot, and that's okay. We ask them to put the bands on their legs in the cycle mode and hold on to something. Hold on to a chair, hold on to the wall, hold on to a desk, and gradually their balance starts to, get stronger. And all of a sudden they're more balanced. Guess what? Their gait is more smooth. They can actually walk better. They feel better when they're walking. And the third exercise is simply when you do sitting up straight, shoulders back, when you can start to balance for more than a few seconds, then the next exercise, and I've seen many women really love this exercise, is put a book on your head and simply pace back and forth. Walk like a supermodel. Walk with the perfect posture as you have the bands on. You don't have to walk for a mile. You don't have to walk for 2 miles. Walk, in your house for 5 minutes, back and forth, back and forth. Those three exercises will make that core as tight as it was when we were in our 20s.
So is the effect of that you have the bands on, and you're using some muscles, and so they're stimulating the hormone response.
Correct.
And then you're using core muscles, and it's not like our body can release the hormone and tell it just go to the legs. It just
Right.
goes throughout the body. So
Correct.
we get the effects even at the core, even though the bands like aren't technically targeting that.
Correct. Because Katsu is systemic, we simply use the bands on our arms or legs as the kickstarter. It's the catalyst for all of these mechanisms in the body to begin. And so if you are, if you get, okay, I've done an arm workout, okay, I've done a leg workout, but you know what? I just need my stomach to be a little more taut, a little stronger. So you can do these three simple exercises. Now you could do sit-ups, but how many people in their, 50s, 60s, and 70s really like doing sit-ups? So, if you can sit up straight for 5, 10 minutes, and I always tell people, hey, put the bands on the legs while you're watching let's say a 30-minute program. Put the bands on the legs, do the cycle program throughout the 30 minutes. But during commercial time, sit up straight on that couch. The commercial time is the core time. The program is your leg time. And so when people start thinking about that, they really have this profound shift, and it's like, whoa, I can sit here. It literally sounds too good to be true. But the reason we've expanded to 49 countries around the world and all across the United States is because people see I can work on my core on my couch as I'm watching Netflix. It's a paradigm shift.
Yeah, I'll tell you, that is one of the things I love about it is like, even with our patients who are in pain, they're like, I need to rehab my knee, but I cannot do that because it hurts.
Yeah.
So, okay, fine. Look, sit there and just, move your foot back and forth, and you're working out your leg. It's not in the sense that we all kind of got latched onto and thought about for so long, but the quality of that, the improvement and the healing response is incredible. So to be able to take Katsu and use it in, kind of these everyday activities, these easier activities, and get the same benefits as what we think of as like, the harder or more difficult activities is really, really good. One of the hacks that I use for this is, and I love the kind of combination of using Katsu in this method, is I'll take my weight vest that I do like my
Yeah.
zone 2 training, and put an audio book on, put the bands on, and do a 30-minute walk with the
Oh,
weight
perfect.
vest.
Perfect.
And it's incredible. You've got like, you're getting, I don't know, 3 hours of work
Yeah.
in this little 30-minute session just because you're layering some of the technologies in there. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Absolutely. I mean, we call that double stacking. Now, in your case, it sounds like you're triple stacking. You're listening to an audiobook, you're getting strength training, and you're getting that stamina improvement through a 30-minute walk with the bands on. It's beautiful.
You mentioned hormones. Let's go through a little bit of kind of, you're doing the cycle and you're doing this. What's the kind of hormone change that happens whenever we're doing that?
Okay, so let's look at the body when we aren't doing katsu. So you don't have the bands on. But let's say you've got a two-story home and your washing machine is on the first floor, but you're putting all the folded clothes up on the second floor. So you're folding the clothes and then you're walking up and down the stairs, putting the clothes in the bedroom. Your muscles are working out. We don't view it as working out, but that simple fact of folding the clothes and folding the beach towels or the pants, etc., that's exercise. Then we're walking up and down the stairs. So you're working the arms, you're working the legs, and you're also working the core to some degree. During that process, your muscles are being what we call stressed. And when they're stressed, they build up a little bit of lactate, a little bit of metabolic waste because it is work. It's not strenuous work, but it is work, and that sends a signal through the central nervous system up to our brain, and then the brain, through a pituitary gland that sits right behind the eyeball, shoots out a variety of hormones. The biggest hormone that we see with katsu, oh, I'm sorry, with any exercise, is the growth hormone. And people may associate growth hormone or HGH with, Olympic athletes or bodybuilders, etc. But it's a natural hormone that the human body uses to grow from childhood to teenage years to our adult life. It's just a natural thing that enables our body to grow. But after we reach puberty, that amount of HGH through our lifestyle, through our sedentary lifestyles, and because of the natural aging of the human body, that starts to fall off. Now, we exercise in order so that drop off, that natural drop off in growth hormone, doesn't drop off so much. So we want it to be maintained throughout our life. So that's what the body normally does. With Katsu, we put the bands either on our arms or legs, and as you do with your weighted vest walking, we get much, much greater lactate in our muscles for the same amount of time, same amount of effort. And when that lactate is sensed by the brain, it produces a lot more. We're not talking one times, 2x or 3x. We're talking about many, many more growth hormones are flowing through your body. And as you stated, the only way hormones and metabolites flow through the body is through our vascular system. So it's produced by the brain and goes through all the veins and arteries of our body. Now, when we're injured, those cells in our body have a little receptor. And when that receptor is injured, torn, damaged in some way, it says, hey, body, I need some help over here. And when those hormones are going through the body, the hormones are smart enough. We've evolved as a species for that hormone to be attracted by that injured cell or stressed cell, and then it does its work. So in the case of a human growth hormone, it actually makes the muscle bigger. Now, we aren't going to be like Arnold Schwarzenegger big, but we will have a more toned muscle. So instead of a flabby kind of skin behind the back of our arms, if we're a, let's say, 65-year-old woman, suddenly that arm will be more toned. And that is aesthetically pleasing and more importantly, very, very healthful. So that's the process that it's the same thing without Katsu, but when you have Katsu, it's totally, totally amplified.
So that would be the same thing if I go into the gym, and this is kind of my typical thing whenever I'm doing Katsu. If I go to the gym and I'm doing, like a dumbbell press, and I'm doing that, let's just say I'm going super light. I'm doing 20 pounds and I do that workout. What you just said still happens, right? I still get
Still
some
happen.
lactate. I
Yep.
still get some hormonal response to that. If I do that same workout, I put the Katsu bands on and I do my 20-pound shoulder press, and my workload is the same in those. And I know this is probably different for everybody. What is the difference in my base 20-pound workout and my Katsu 20-pound workout?
Well, on the hormonal side, which is really how the body protects itself, maintains itself, and strengthens itself. On the hormonal side, it's a few 100% more. So not two times, not three times, but on our initial tests, initial research that is published in peer-reviewed articles, the original research said on average, when we took the patients who did Katsu versus the patients who didn't do Katsu doing the same exercise, patients with Katsu did 290% more. So, metabolically speaking, this is, you can sort of grab some figures out of the air. Was it similar to doing twice as many repetitions or twice as much weight? We can't really equate the percentage of hormonal increase to an actual number. But the fact of the matter is, the effect on the human body in growing the muscle and making it more toned, whether it's a lower body, upper body, or core, you can actually see that. And that is what people very much enjoy. If we say, oh, you do this and the equivalent of, lifting weights 4 times as long or with 4 times the weight. Okay, that is some figure. Maybe it's a marketing figure, but we would prefer to explain Katsu through its a hormonal response. So you have that hormonal response, but keep in mind, we're also making the vascular tissue more elastic, which is also almost more important because as we age, typically our capillaries and veins and arteries become more brittle, meaning they don't stretch. They're not as pliable as normal. But with Katsu, when you're engorging the limbs in blood, you're making that vascular tissue more elastic. Practically, what does that mean? It means your blood circulation is better.
Yeah.
And when the blood circulation is better, you have a much better blood flow to, let's say, injured parts of your body, whether you have tendinitis or some kind of neuropathy. And so we look at those two benefits. What is the increased or the improved blood circulation, and what is the hormonal response? Those two things combined enables the human body to actually change for the better.
Yeah, it's incredible to get, and I agree with what you're saying in terms of like it's hard to say what the weight would be. Like, oh, is it like I was doing, three times more weight? That's probably a training thing. Like if you're poorly trained, it might be that like you're doing way more weight, and if you're well trained, it might be like you're doing two times more weight. But the hormonal thing is really where the workhorse of the body happens anyway. So I think communicating on that level is more accurate in terms of the science. One of the things that we look at with this, and when we get that, the stuff that a lot of people don't realize is that it's not only the contractile tissue of the muscle, but it's also like the tendon and ligaments that we need to be training. We need to be tapping into those neural mechanisms, the nerve mechanisms, especially as we age, because that's where we get all of our proprioception, all our stability and our balance from. So the fact that we can affect those while we're doing Katsu training because we are kind of flooding the area with growth hormone and hormonal response is really, really exciting to me as we look at bringing this to maybe a balanced population like you're talking about. People who are having trouble moving around their day, you start doing, balance training and adding some perturbations with Katsu. And not only are you improving, all of the contractile, the muscle, the tendon, the ligaments, but you're actually, improving the body's response to that. That's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And people have all kinds of inflammation in their joints, in tendons. We all have, or many people have, tendinitis. It could be carpal tunnel syndrome if you're on your computer a lot. And so, how does Katsu actually help those? We can understand growing the muscle. That's sort of easier to understand. So we've got our muscle, lots and lots of capillaries in our muscle. We can imagine if we opened up our bicep right now, it'd be a bloody mess. Then we look at our bone, let's say the humerus, that the upper part of your bone, that also has capillaries, but many fewer capillaries. Then you look at your ligament or tendon, and that's very capillary poor. It does have some capillaries, and it needs to, but much fewer than a muscle. So if we put the bands on and we have the same pressure, it's easy to engorge that muscle with blood because it has lots of capillaries. For the same pressure, it's less effective at putting blood, engorging the ligament and tendon or bone in blood. So the beauty of using these kinds of equipment is you can increase the pressure incrementally over time that would actually help move the blood, engorge those capillaries in the ligaments and tendons and bones. And that's why people who have a broken bone or tendinitis with Katsu, suddenly they're seeing results because using the same equipment, we can actually make the muscle stronger or help with the inflammation of the tendons that are, causing you pain in your hand, your wrist, your elbow, your shoulder, your knee, your ankle. And so that's how the product works. We just changed the amount of pressure or the length of time that we're putting the pressure on, and that will help put more blood into those perhaps injured or inflamed ligaments and tendons, or if you've broken a bone or have some kind of fracture. And it doesn't have to be a fracture in your upper body or lower body. It could be a fracture in your ribs. It could be a fracture in your clavicle. So it really doesn't matter where the bone break it is, but we use this equipment to actually increase or shorten the healing time.
Yeah, it's I love whenever we have these conversations because it like we're on the same page with a lot of it. That's the exact reason for us adding Katsu to our regenerative therapy patients. So if somebody comes in with a rotator cuff tear, we'll do, some targeted needling to stimulate a healing response in the rotator cuff while we put them on a regenerative peptide. And the complaint that a lot of the orthos would say is, well, that's a hypovascular tissue. You're not getting the delivery to that tissue of the peptide, but we'll come behind that and use Katsu to engorge that area and force blood flow, which
Yeah.
is carrying some of these regenerative peptides to that area more because we targeted it with a needling session, and the results are astounding. I mean, I've had patients who have done stem cell level treatments and get, sometimes, I think there's multiple reasons for this, but better regenerative results using that protocol. And I think a lot of it's for exactly the reason that you say is we're forcing some of these areas to get the nutrients they need to respond to the treatment that we're providing or getting.
Yeah. I love the example you gave. It's another example of double stacking. You're using different modalities to help that your patient with that torn rotator cuff, you're needling peptides plus Katsu. You're just stacking all these things, and with your knowledge of human anatomy and the mechanisms that are happening, you're doing exactly or you're offering exactly what the body needs. And it's without a doubt, your patients are going, thank you, doctor. This is great.
So one of the questions, like as you were talking about this, so initially what we were doing a lot was we would start patients on cycle, that they would go through the cycle, and then for very targeted things we would use Katsu training, which was more sustained pressure while they were doing certain movements. Is that still something that's kind of on the patient's week if they're working on some of this stuff?
Yes. So when they're under the guidance of a trained, educated, sort of visionary healthcare provider like you, that's the perfect use of Katsu. The perfect use of Katsu. That ending part of the Katsu workout, if you will, that Katsu training, or we call it Katsu constant. When you have that pressure, that's really good to do some specific movement or exercise. Just perfect. Now, in the case that people aren't under your guidance and they aren't there with you, for those people, especially the older people, we simply say just use the Katsu cycle mode at your home. If you're with a trained individual, with someone like yourself, do both, because under your watchful eye, you can tell them exactly what to do, and you have all these concepts that you're double and triple stacking in order to achieve the results. But when you're at your home, and you're just doing it to maintain or improve, then the cut cycle, especially for people who are over the age of 50, is the perfectly safe, perfectly effective modality to use.
I would love to see, like, you talk about that, and I'm like, I would love to see, and I'm sure y'all have more like case studies than y'all can handle. But somebody who goes in and starts to improve diet, increase protein, like quality protein absorption, and add a daily Katsu regimen, and like how much muscle mass could a healthy 65-year-old put on in, say, like a year?
So we actually have that data. We and because some of the case studies that we do are actually in done in the hospital, and we document everything. So the most dramatic was a 104-year-old. She was bedridden for 4 months. I think it was 4 to 5 months. She was bedridden. Then when she started Katsu, she actually started Katsu while she was bedridden. She didn't walk. When she had to go to the bathroom, she had to be picked out of bed, put on a wheelchair, taken to the bathroom. She did her business and then come back. So she was totally bedridden, but she was using Katsu on her legs and her arms during this period. As she got stronger and stronger, and of course they did all the They did all the testing on her. So we actually have ultrasound images of her muscle mass before and after. 6 months after daily use of Katsu, she increased at 104 years old 22% more muscle mass in her quadriceps and hamstrings. 22%. Now, what does that actually mean? That actually means now, instead of having a nurse pick her up out of bed or a caregiver pick her up out of bed, put her in a wheelchair, and take her to the bathroom, now not only can she get out of bed and walk to the bathroom herself, she can sit down on the toilet, she can stand up without a problem, and very importantly, in her case, she can actually now walk up stairs. So she hadn't visited her second story for many years, probably. I know certainly for a few. And now she had the strength with that 22% muscle mass to go up and down the stairs, slowly, of course, but she was able to do it. She can walk around, she can walk outside, look at her garden. So, 22% is basically, a quarter of a more leg, if you will. Now, everybody isn't that dramatic, but quite well. You increase muscle mass and muscle strength by 5% or 10%. Suddenly, opening up that jar or lifting that, your luggage or taking a stack of, I don't know, books from one room to that, suddenly it's something becomes impossible, becomes possible. And that is a huge increase in our quality of life.
Yeah, I mean, if going back to the research we were talking about at the beginning of the episode, if you take somebody from the lowest strength level for their age group and just improve them one standard deviation, just one little click up, they have a 160% decrease in risk of death. So that, like, just using that, even if we're nowhere close to 22%,
Yeah.
which is massive. I mean, that could be, in a typical person, 150-pound male, you might be talking about 15 to 20 pounds of muscle.
Yeah.
That's incredible. But even if we're not doing that, if we're just using this and we get just enough to get us out of that kind of lowest category, you're talking about a bigger change in risk reduction for health than quitting smoking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's it, I just want people to wrap their head around how big that is that, you quit smoking, we're talking about a 1.2 to 1.5 risk reduction. Just improving that little tiny sliver gets us a 1.6, 160% reduction. And just putting something on and doing your regular daily activities, even if we're not getting to the training part, you're going to get out of that and you're going to improve your health span by this incredible amount.
Oh, absolutely. And as we age, we nobody likes to get older. But if we can maintain the status quo like in 10-year increments, well, guess what? If you're 65 years old and your grandson, your granddaughter are in high school and they play sports, guess what? 10 years from now or 5 years from now, you'll be able to watch them play in college, for example. You'll be able to see them, you'll be able to see your great grandchildren. And what's a more beautiful thing than a great grandfather or mother holding their
Yeah.
child and being able to hold their child and walk around the room with that child, or teaching them how to walk, holding their little hand in your hand and walking. This, we want people as they age to be able to do these very practical things that mean so much to us as humans.
Yeah, I think one of the things I like about this, and I want to circle back to bone health, because when you look at fractures in the aging population, it's a very, very big problem. If you end up with, a fracture, I think the data is like, over 75, maybe. If somebody ends up with a hip fracture, your survivability beyond a year is pretty dismal. It's really, really a major issue, and if we can alter that. The risk of having that fracture by using Kaatsu, that can really alter the course of somebody's life at that age. But one of the things that I really like about this is exactly what you just said. If you start using that, the possibilities that start to come into your mind is, if I'm doing this now, I'm not afraid of being the 90-year-old who's not contributing, who's not doing the things I want and living the life and having the family time and going to my maybe great grandkids events and being in there. I hear it a lot, like, and I hate this term where people are like, oh, I don't want to live that long. And you're like, well, if you were healthy and you're doing the things you want to do, then wouldn't you want more time with your family and see the next graduation and see the next marriage and the next great great grandkid? They're saying that because they're worried that they're not going to feel good. They're going to be a burden. And I think just telling somebody to start doing Kaatsu, they start to see this different future. They start to have a different hope.
Yes, and so one of the big reasons we Dr. Sato actually saw the future being very bright for Katsu was the ability for the bone mass, the bone density to actually be increased. Now, you can't just sit and do the cycle and increase the bone density. That's not it's not this miracle thing. We said early on, you have to work it. So put the bands on but just simple walking. And if in case of the bedridden person, if you can't walk, you can at least rotate your ankle or curl your toes or do something like that. Everybody's starting at some point. And we have many protocols for people who, have osteoporosis or other issues. We encourage them, let's get you strong enough to walk safely with the COTS bands on. And that walking mechanism, it could be on a treadmill. It could just be around your garden. It could be in your front yard. It could be walking, with your grandchildren or great grandchildren, whatever it is. We want that bone to be more sturdy. One of the big data points that I always saw was the ability for an older person, if they trip, and we all trip, it could be on a sidewalk, it could be in our home, we all sort of stumble over things. When we're younger, we can catch ourselves and we don't fall. An older person, because they don't have the muscularity in their lower body, if they stumble, they do hit the ground. And sometimes they hit the ground hard, and there goes their lower body or their wrist because they try to break their fall. And we want that person, to be strong enough that if they stumble, if they trip on a piece of carpet, a dog's toy, whatever it is, at least they're strong enough to catch themselves. So we're preventing an injury simply by using Katsu or any form of exercise. So we can have the leg strength to catch ourselves. And then, but in those cases that we do fall, again, have the ability to break our fall with, a stronger arm as opposed to a weaker arm. And so all of these various things, that's what Dr. Sato was focused on in Japan, because the Japanese population, to be honest, is the oldest population in the world, much older than the United States. They have many more people who are older than 100, older than 65, and their population is getting older and older and older and older. And Dr. Sato knew that, and he knows that if someone had a hip, they broke their hip, they fractured whatever, and they're 75 or 85, not only was that rehabilitation much longer, it required many more caregivers, many more nurses and therapists to take care of that individual. So one way we all can participate in reducing, our country's medical costs is by being as resilient and strong and agile as we can. So we're preventing ourselves, or we're reducing the probability that we're going to be a burden on somebody. And that is what Dr. Sato saw back in the 1990s. And he began this journey with all the research, and therefore vascularity improvement and then bone density, at least maintenance, was one of were two of the main things that he was focused on. Of course, there's strength gains without a doubt, but there's also the vascularity and then the bone strength that was really, really critical for keeping an aging Japanese population as healthy as possible, and therefore also an American population. We're all getting older. We have fewer kids than when when certainly my generation, the baby boomer generation, were kids. And so, we have to maintain our health. So, we, like you said, we aren't a burden on our family or society.
Yeah, that you're right. I mean, we check the boxes. You're creating, you're lowering your risk of hopefully getting into a position that we cause a fracture by doing some of these resistance training exercises with Katsu. But at the same time, you're getting that growth hormone, which we know, like the flip side, in an older population, those with lower growth hormone have a much higher incidence of bone mineral deficiency. So when we look at that, if we can start earlier and start to train that and keep that bone mass up, or at a very minimum maintain it, while we're actually improving strength, are that would be a wonderful study. People using it, what's the incidence of falls and fractures, and how much does that go down in people using Katsu as part of their training routine. As you can tell, the more we go into this, you're like the implications just kind of ripple out.
Yeah.
Stephen, where can people, people who are interested in finding more out about Katsu, where can they order some Katsu bands? Where can they get some Katsu protocols? I know y'all put out a ton of stuff lately.
Yeah. So just go to www.katsu.com. So KAATSU. And KA means additional, ATSU means pressure. So it means additional pressure. Just go to www.katsu.com. We also offer twice a week webinars. Newcomers or veterans alike can join us. They can ask any amount of questions like, what button do I push? I strained my calf. What can I do? I'm diabetic, but I want to increase my muscle mass. So what do I do? So we have those on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And they're free webinars. Anybody can join. We provide we call it Katsu blog. So Katsu blog.com. We have hundreds of articles there. We publish magazines, Katsu magazines. They're on our website. They're free to download. And we just want to share the practical applications of Katsu for people who are interested. And I want to learn more about this, or okay, I don't believe it, but let me read some stuff. So katsublog.com, katsu.com. We have free webinars. We try to share as much information as we can, but Doctor, this program that you have, I mean, it's a great thing. You're doing a great service for a lot of people, and it's an honor for me to be here.
Yeah, as always, Stephen. These are always a blast. We'll have to do another one. Hopefully, maybe not in 3 years. Maybe we'll move it up a year or two and constantly get the updates from you. But thanks for everything y'all do. Y'all are changing a ton of lives, and I can't be happier to see how this has progressed since we kind of first met, and how much more this is in the kind of health world for everybody and getting more access. Y'all are doing amazing things. So much appreciated to y'all spending the energy and y'all's whole team getting this out there and constantly improving.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks,
My
Stephen.
pleasure. Bye bye.